In this episode, we are turning domain one of the CompTIA cybersecurity analyst, CySA+, exam into a spoken glossary, not as a dry dictionary reading, but as a way to make the language of security operations feel familiar, connected, and much easier to carry into later study. A lot of beginners do not struggle because the terms are impossible. They struggle because the terms arrive too quickly, sound similar to one another, and seem to float around without a clear place in the bigger picture. What helps is hearing those terms explained as parts of one living environment where systems create activity, analysts watch for patterns, and small clues gradually turn into useful understanding. By the end of this glossary conversation, the goal is not for you to memorize every word on command, but to recognize what the major domain one terms mean, why they matter, and how they relate to one another when you are thinking like an analyst instead of just collecting vocabulary. A good place to begin is with a few terms that shape how analysts describe what they are seeing. An event is any recorded activity that happened on a system, network, application, or account, and by itself an event is not necessarily suspicious. An alert is a signal that some rule, threshold, behavior pattern, or security control has decided that an event or group of events deserves attention. A finding is a conclusion or observation drawn from evidence, often after some review has already happened. An incident is a more serious matter because it usually means the organization believes confidentiality, integrity, or availability has been threatened in a meaningful way and coordinated action is required. An anomaly is behavior that stands out from the expected pattern, while a baseline is the rough picture of normal behavior that makes unusual activity easier to recognize. Noise is the clutter of events that do not help much, while signal is the small part of the data that actually helps an analyst see something important. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. From there, one of the most important domain one-word groups involves logs and visibility, because analysts can only understand what happened if the environment recorded enough evidence to work with. A log is a record of activity, and telemetry is the broader stream of observable data coming from systems, applications, networks, and security tools. A log source is simply the place that produces those records, such as an operating system, an identity provider, a firewall, or an endpoint tool. Log ingestion is the process of collecting those records into a place where they can be stored and reviewed, while parsing is the act of breaking raw records into usable fields such as timestamps, usernames, source addresses, or event types. Normalization means converting different log formats into a more consistent structure so records from unlike sources can still be compared. Retention refers to how long logs are kept, and correlation is the process of connecting records from different places so several small clues can become one clearer story. Another group of terms matters because analysts need to understand what exactly they are protecting and observing. An asset is anything the organization values enough to track and defend, including devices, systems, applications, identities, and data. A host is a system on a network that can send, receive, or process information, while an endpoint is usually the user-facing device or system where activity becomes visible in a very practical way, such as a laptop, workstation, or server. A server is a system that provides a service or resource to other systems, and a workload is the application, service, or processing task that a system is performing. A virtual machine, VM, is a software-based computer running inside another system, which matters because modern environments often include many logical systems on shared hardware. A container is a lighter packaged environment for an application and its dependencies, while an appliance is a system built for a more specific role, often combining hardware and software into one focused security or network function. Asset inventory is the record of what exists in the environment, and analysts care about it because unknown assets create blind spots. The operating system, OS, gives analysts another essential block of vocabulary because so much suspicious behavior becomes understandable only when you know how the local system is supposed to work. The OS is the main software layer that manages hardware, memory, users, files, and processes. A process is a running instance of a program, while a service is a background function that supports ongoing system or application tasks. Memory is the temporary working space the system uses while activity is happening, and the file system is the way the OS organizes stored data. The registry on some systems acts like a configuration database, which matters because both legitimate programs and malicious activity may leave traces there. Persistence is any technique that helps a process or malicious tool survive reboots or maintain access over time. Privilege refers to the level of authority a user or process has, and when a process runs with more privilege than expected, that becomes a very important clue because compromise often becomes more dangerous once elevated access is involved. Network language is another area that beginners need to hear often enough that it stops sounding abstract. A network is the set of connections that allows systems to communicate, and a protocol is the agreed method those systems use to exchange data. A port is a numbered communication point that helps identify what service is being used, while a segment is a portion of the network separated for control, performance, or security reasons. A subnet is a more technical subdivision of network space, but for analysts thinking the key idea is still separation and scope. Ingress means traffic entering a system or environment, and egress means traffic leaving it. North-south traffic usually describes communication entering or leaving a network boundary, while east-west traffic usually describes movement between internal systems. Lateral movement is the term for an attacker or compromised process moving from one internal system to another, and analysts care about it because an incident that begins on one host often becomes much worse when it spreads quietly across trusted internal paths. Identity language sits near the center of Domain 1 because so much of security comes down to who is trying to do what and whether that action should be allowed. Identity and Access Management, IAM, is the broad discipline concerned with digital identities, access decisions, and permission boundaries. A credential is the piece of information or evidence used to prove identity, such as a password, token, or certificate. Authentication is the process of proving who you are, while authorization is the process of deciding what you are allowed to do after identity has been accepted. Least privilege is the principle that users and systems should have only the access genuinely needed for their role, nothing more. A privileged account has elevated rights that can affect many systems or settings, while a service account is used by applications or automated functions rather than by a person signing in interactively. Multi-factor authentication, MFA, requires more than one proof of identity, and that matters because stolen passwords become much less useful when another verification step is still required. Data protection terms matter because analysts are not only watching systems for the sake of the systems themselves. They are watching for threats to information that the organization depends on. Confidentiality, integrity, and availability, CIA, is the classic way of describing the three core goals of information protection. Confidentiality means preventing unauthorized disclosure. Integrity means preventing unauthorized change or corruption. And availability means keeping systems and data usable when needed. Sensitive data is information that would create real harm if exposed, altered, or lost, whether that harm is financial, operational, legal, or reputational. Data at rest refers to stored information. Data in transit refers to information moving across a network, and data in use refers to information being actively processed. Encryption is the process of transforming readable data into protected form so unauthorized parties cannot easily use it, while hashing is a one-way transformation often used for integrity checking or password protection. Tokenization replaces sensitive values with safer substitutes, which can reduce exposure when the original value is not needed in day-to-day operations. Some of the most recognizable Domain 1 terms belong to the tools and team structures that security operations use every day. A Security Operations Center, SOC, is the function or team responsible for monitoring, triaging, investigating, and coordinating response to security-relevant activity. A Security Information and Event Management, SIEM, platform collects and analyzes logs from different sources so analysts can search, correlate, and alert on important patterns. Endpoint Detection and Response, EDR, focuses on what is happening on endpoints and helps analysts see process behavior, account use, file activity, and possible compromise at the device level. Extended detection and response (XDR) pulls visibility across several security layers, often combining endpoint, network, identity, email, and cloud perspectives into a broader picture. Security orchestration, automation, and response (SOAR) is used to automate repeatable actions and help teams move faster and more consistently. A dashboard is the visual summary of current activity or trends. A rule is the logic that triggers a detection, and a use case is the practical security problem the team is trying to identify or manage. Detection language also deserves careful attention because many exam questions turn on small differences between similar-looking terms. An indicator of compromise, IOC, is a clue suggesting that malicious activity may already have occurred, such as a known bad file hash, a suspicious domain, or a pattern of system behavior linked to past compromise. An indicator of attack, IOA, focuses more on behavior and intent, meaning the activity pattern itself looks like an attack sequence even before a known bad artifact is confirmed. A signature is a known pattern used to detect activity that matches a recognized threat, while a heuristic is a more flexible detection method that uses behavior or characteristics rather than exact matching. An anomaly is anything outside normal patterns, but not every anomaly is malicious. A false positive is a benign event flagged as suspicious, while a false negative is a dangerous event that the tools or team failed to catch. Tuning is the process of improving rules, thresholds, and logic so detections become more useful, which matters because too much noise can hide the very thing the team is trying to see. Threat-focused terms help analysts connect what is happening locally with the larger patterns of the threat landscape. Threat intelligence is information about adversaries, methods, infrastructure, or campaigns that helps defenders make better decisions. A threat feed is a stream of updated intelligence data, but the key point is that a feed is useful only if it is relevant and timely enough to support the environment you are defending. Context is what turns raw intelligence into something meaningful, and enrichment is the process of adding that context to alerts, events, or indicators so analysts can interpret them faster. A threat actor is the person, group, or organization behind malicious activity, while a campaign is a broader set of related operations or actions carried out over time. Tactics, techniques, and procedures, TTPS, describe the goals, methods, and repeated habits adversaries use. Threat hunting is the proactive search for signs of malicious activity that may not have triggered a clean alert, and a hunting hypothesis is the reasoned belief that a certain behavior might exist in the environment and is worth searching for deliberately. Infrastructure and architecture terms also show up throughout Domain 1 because security operations always happen inside some kind of technical design. On-premises refers to systems the organization runs in its own physical facilities, while cloud refers to computing resources delivered through a provider's platform rather than housed only in local company space. A hybrid environment combines these worlds, which matters because visibility, ownership, and control may vary depending on where the system lives. Segmentation means separating parts of the network or environment so everything is not equally reachable from everything else. A demilitarized zone, DMZ, is a more exposed network area often used for public-facing services, so those systems are not placed directly inside more trusted internal spaces. Zero trust is the idea that systems, users, and requests should not be trusted by default just because they are already inside the environment. The attack surface is the full set of places where an attacker might try to interact with or abuse the environment, and exposure is the practical degree to which those places are reachable and risky. There is also a useful set of analyst workflow terms that tie many of these concepts together during daily operations. Triage is the act of sorting and prioritizing activity, so the most important or time-sensitive issues get attention first. Validation means checking whether the alert or finding is supported by enough evidence to be trusted, while enrichment means adding more context so the team can understand the issue without jumping between too many separate systems. Prioritization is the judgment call about what deserves action first, and it depends on confidence, scope, asset value, possible business impact, and the quality of the supporting evidence. Escalation means moving the issue to a higher level of attention, authority, or technical depth when the situation calls for it. A case or ticket is the record used to track the issue through investigation and response, and suppression is the deliberate reduction of alerts known to be low value so analysts can focus on stronger signals. Allow lists and block lists also belong here because they define what should be permitted or denied, though both need careful management or they can create gaps rather than clarity. Another set of words that becomes very important in Domain 1 involves time, coverage, and visibility gaps. Dwell time is the amount of time a threat remains in the environment before detection or removal, and it matters because long dwell time often means more opportunity for spread, persistence, and damage. Coverage refers to how well the organization can observe important systems, users, and data paths, while a blind spot is an area where the team has too little visibility to judge confidently what is happening. A gap may come from missing logs, unsupported systems, poor network design, or tools that do not see a critical part of the environment. Continuous monitoring is the idea that visibility should not depend only on occasional checks, but should happen in a steady and repeatable way. Mean time to detect is the average time it takes to notice a real issue, and although the exact numbers matter differently in each organization, the concept matters because fast detection often depends on architecture, good telemetry, useful detections, and disciplined analyst work all supporting one another. As this glossary review comes to a close, the big thing to remember is that Domain 1 vocabulary becomes much easier once you stop hearing it as a set of unrelated exam words and start hearing it as the language of visibility, context, and practical security operations. Events become alerts, alerts become findings, findings may become incidents, and that whole path depends on logs, identities, networks, systems, tools, and analysts working together well enough to separate signal from noise. The strongest learners are usually not the ones who memorize the longest list in the shortest time. They are the ones who understand how the terms connect, which makes each new term easier to place when it appears. If you keep building that mental map, Domain 1 starts to sound less like a glossary you must survive and more like a description of how modern security teams observe the world around them, which is exactly the kind of understanding that makes later study much easier.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.